The wind howls across a frozen landscape. The snow falls thick and endless, swallowing every sound. In a small medieval village, darkness presses against the walls of a timber hut. Inside, a family huddles together. No fire, no light, only breath and hope. Outside, the temperature plunges below freezing. The world turns white. And yet somehow they survive. How? How did people in the Middle Ages endure nights of blizzards and frost without the warmth of firewood? This is the story of survival, of cleverness, community, and sheer will. This is how medieval villagers faced the merciless cold and lived to see the dawn. To understand their struggle, imagine winter in medieval Europe. Not the mild winters of today, but brutal seasons when rivers froze solid, snow buried entire hamlets, and frost clung to the inside of every home. For peasants, survival wasn't guaranteed. A single harsh winter could mean hunger, sickness, even death. Firewood was life itself, but it was also a luxury. By December, most villagers had already gathered what wood they could through autumn. But forests were not endless playgrounds. Many were owned by nobles or the church, and peasants were forbidden to cut trees freely. Gathering wood from a lord's forest without permission was theft, and the punishment could be severe. So as winter deepened, many found themselves facing blizzard nights with little or no fuel left to burn. Yet they survived. Through ingenuity, through traditions passed down for generations, and through a relationship with nature that was both intimate and practical. The first secret of their endurance lay in their homes. Medieval cottages were not the drafty huts we might imagine. They were built for warmth above all else. Walls were thick, made from wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with a mix of mud, straw, and dung. The floors were often packed earth, sometimes layered with straw to provide insulation. And the roof, thatched thickly with reeds or straw, trapped rising heat. Windows were tiny or absent altogether, keeping out icy drafts. Once a small amount of warmth built up inside, it stayed longer than you'd think. At the center of many homes stood a hearth, a shallow pit of stone or clay used for cooking and heating. But when there was no firewood to burn, families adapted. They used peat, blocks of partially decayed vegetation dug from marshy ground. Peat burned slowly, releasing steady heat and smoke that could fill a cottage and linger for hours. It wasn't as hot as wood, but in desperate winters, it was life-saving. Others burned dried dung, especially from cows or sheep. Animal waste, when dried properly, became surprisingly efficient fuel. It crackled less, produced a steady heat, and was free to gather. In some parts of Europe, it was as valuable as wood itself. Even children helped collect and dry dung during the summer months, storing it for the long, cruel winter to come. But not every night had a fire. Some nights, when fuel ran out, the villagers relied on the warmth of each other. Medieval families slept together in the same bed or huddled closely beneath layers of wool, linen, and animal hides. In small cottages, this body heat could raise the temperature several degrees. A difference between life and death. And then there were the animals. In many villages, livestock shared space with humans. A wall, sometimes no more than wooden planks, separated the family from their cows, sheep, or goats. The heat from the animals' bodies warmed the living space, and their breath filled the air with faint moisture that kept the chill away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was survival through symbiosis. The warmth of life keeping life alive. Every bit of resourcefulness mattered. Windows were stuffed with cloth or straw to block the cold. Door cracks were sealed with mud or moss. Straw mats were placed on the floors, thick and layered, to keep bare feet from touching frozen earth. At night, villagers slept under piles of heavy woolen blankets or even cloaks lined with fur, often wrapping their feet in rags before lying down. The goal wasn't comfort, it was endurance. Meals, too, played a vital role in survival. Before winter arrived, villagers preserved food that would help sustain body heat and strength: salted meats, dried beans, root vegetables stored in cellars. Hot soups made from barley, lentils, or onions simmered during the day whenever fuel was available. Even when fires burned low, embers were carefully preserved, banked under ashes so they could be rekindled in the morning. A lost flame meant precious fuel, wasted trying to restart it. But medieval people didn't just fight the cold with warmth. They adapted their lives to it. During blizzards, life slowed down. Work outside ceased. The rhythm of existence shifted inward. Villagers repaired tools, spun wool, or mended clothes. They gathered together in the homes of neighbors or in communal barns, sharing warmth and stories. In those moments, community itself became a kind of fire, keeping isolation and despair at bay. In northern regions, Scandinavia, the Alps, or the Scottish Highlands, survival demanded even greater creativity. There, winters were longer, darker, more unforgiving. People built their homes partially underground or against hillsides, using the earth as natural insulation. In Iceland and parts of northern Britain, turf houses were common. Thick, walled homes made of layered soil and grass that held in warmth astonishingly well. These houses were dim, smoky, and small, but incredibly efficient against the cold. And yet, even with all this ingenuity, the threat never truly vanished. Winters took lives. The very old, the very young, and the weak often perished. Frostbite and illness were constant dangers. But through hardship, the medieval people learned resilience, lessons written into their daily routines and passed down through centuries. There was also a spiritual side to this endurance. In medieval belief, the cold was not just nature, it was a test. Enduring the winter's cruelty with patience and faith was seen as a virtue. Monks in isolated abbeys recorded how they prayed through nights so cold that ink froze on their quills. They saw endurance not as misery, but as devotion. Even peasants, struggling through endless snow, found meaning in survival itself, as though the warmth of the human soul was a light no storm could extinguish. Still, when the cold was too great, and fuel too scarce, they turned to ingenuity once more. Some villagers built makeshift stoves from clay or iron scraps, designed to trap heat from a single ember. Others gathered heather straw, or even dried leaves, bundling them into tight rolls to burn slowly through the night. Every spark mattered. Every bit of warmth was fought for. When we think of the Middle Ages, we often imagine knights, castles, or grand battles. But the true test of medieval life wasn't always fought with swords. It was fought in silence, against wind and frost, in tiny homes lit only by the faint glow of embers. It was fought by ordinary people who refused to surrender to the cold. And there was one more secret to their survival: timing. Medieval villagers understood the rhythm of the seasons intimately. They knew when to gather, when to store, when to seal homes for the coming storm. They lived in tune with nature's pulse. Each season was preparation for the next, and every harvest, every chore, had purpose. By living within these cycles, they ensured that even in the bleakest winter, they would endure. Picture again that frozen village. The blizzard rages. The roofs groan beneath snow. Inside one small cottage, a mother holds her child close beneath layers of wool. A cow shifts softly behind the wooden wall. The faint smell of peat lingers in the air. No fire burns, but life stirs. In that moment, survival itself becomes a quiet act of defiance against nature's fury. When morning comes, the snow has piled higher, but the family emerges, alive. Hungry, tired, but alive. They will gather more peat today, mend a broken roof beam, and share what they can with neighbors. Because in the medieval world, survival was never solitary. It was communal. The warmth of the village kept everyone alive, just as much as the warmth of a fire. So, when we ask how medieval villagers survived blizzard nights without firewood, the answer isn't found in wealth or power. It's found in resourcefulness, endurance, and unity. They built homes that trapped warmth, burned whatever the earth provided, and relied on the strength of each other. They endured, not because the world was kind, but because they were clever enough to live within it. And that, perhaps, is the truest mark of their strength. They didn't conquer nature. They adapted to it. They listened to it, learned from it, and found warmth where none seemed to exist. So the next time you sit beside a glowing fireplace, imagine those long ago villagers huddled in the dark, their breath fogging the air, their spirits unbroken. For them, every ember was life, every dawn a victory. In a world frozen by snow, warmth wasn't just fire, it was faith, ingenuity, and the unyielding human will to survive.